climate change is important to us not because of an abstract idea of what temperature change might mean 100 years from now, but I can see the effects of it day to day in terms of many different communities on the planet and in Africa. But we're also seeing extreme weather patterns. So places which are drier are becoming more dry. We're seeing places which are cold are becoming more cold. And as these things evolve and change over time, plants which we might have relied on for food or for commerce are now beginning to grow in areas which would not traditionally grow, or alternatively, not be able to grow where they've grown for many different, many years. So the net implication of this climate change is that it actually leads to food production change. It actually leads to change in terms of flora and fauna that has an impact on biodiversity. And the crisis that's facing our actually declining um, assets when it comes from a biodiversity perspective is that all of these chains actually connect us together. So sustainable city is just as much about the products and the appliances which we buy and put into our houses, our washing machines and fridges, the age, or let's call it the life cycle of these assets, and how long do they survive before they go out into a landfill, which has to be, managed by a municipality or city. What happens to our batteries, which power our cell phones and our electric toothbrushes? But it's also about the furniture that we choose to buy in our homes. What is it made of? Where does the material come from? And it goes right down to the fabrics on our bodies and the food that we eat. So when we think about sustainable cities, it's really important to think of the city as an amalgam of all these different actions. It's energy, it's transport, it's food security, it's industrial production, it's ensuring that factories don't release dyes into rivers, which then has an impact on fish, which then has an impact on birds, which then has an impact on our own livelihoods. And quite interestingly, what has been shown, and we know for a fact because the world has endured a terrible pandemic in the form of the coronavirus, is that when human beings intrude on natural landscapes, at a pace at which those natural landscapes are unable to absorb or adjust, humans become exposed to a whole range of biological vectors which our bodies are not designed to respond to. So sustainability is also about human health. It's and understanding that the implications of rampant development actually puts our health at risk. Now, of late, I have actually pivoted away from this question of sustainability because, in some respects, it can be seen as a sort of utopia, the sustainable city where everything is perfect. Or it may be seen as an unattainable status for cities which are grappling with poverty, crime, weak economies, etc., etc., etc. Climate smart economic development is where I think the conversation needs to head toward. And what I mean by climate smart is that it acknowledges a number of the complexities pertaining to um, the fact that all of these cities are imbalanced environments, which are imperfect. But we can start thinking about the wood that we're using for our buildings. Is it climate smart forests that actually produce these woods? Are they harvested in a climate smart way? Are they produced in a climate smart way? The furniture and the end products, are they climate smart? And you can extend that argument across every single human activity. So sustainable cities really for me is really about climate. It means that the resources that we consume and the waste that we create should be constructed around an understanding that we have one world. Now, if you look at the consumption patterns, particularly of many of our wealthy countries on the planet, their consumption per capita is equivalent to 2.3 planets. So in other words, if everybody on Earth consumed in the same fashion as some of the richest countries of the world, we would require 2.3 planets to sustain an equivalent lifestyle. We know this is impossible. We do not have 2.3 planets. So this means one of two things. One is that we have to ensure that there's more equity and parity. Those who have less access to energy, food security, decent human environments, we need to ensure that that changes and that we increase access to those opportunities. But also those who consume more and pollute more need to bring down their personal index from 2.3 far below current levels and ideally below 1. And this is the only way that we can end up having a planet in which we are in balance with the resources that we have, and that requires a discipline, if you will, in terms of climate smart urbanization, city making, and human activity, to be honest. And it's a substantial challenge because a lot of the issues that we're facing right now have never been faced before, because the amount of humans on the planet, if you think of the great acceleration since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution in roughly 1830, and our population has significantly increased. So there was a time when human activity had no visceral impact on the planet, and has led to over 200 centuries now, or roughly, of fairly dangerous action because we assume that the planet can take it. We are the generation that is now seeing that, in fact, the planet cannot take it, and the implications of having a planet with 1.5 billion people versus 7 billion people are astronomical, and still subject to study, exercise, and learning. And the challenge is for those people who are unable to grapple with this pivotal change, if you will, um, because the assumption is that the old ways have worked well, so why must we change them? The reality is that they have not worked well. The planet has simply been absorbing, um, frankly, environmentally and ecologically problematic behavior by human beings. And now that capacity to absorb these actions is now diminished.